Alrighty, Australia has named its squad for the first two Ashes tests as well as the World Test Championship final. And in terms of Australian squads that have been released in recent memory, this is probably one of the more interesting ones, um, mainly due to some of the decisions that the selectors have made ahead of this massive, massive winter for Australian Test cricket, I suppose. I've got the squad in front of me, so I'm just going to read it out. So we got Pat Cummins, Scott Boland, Alex Carey, Cameron Green, Marcus Harris, Josh Hazlewood, Travis Head, Josh Inglis, Usman Khawaja, Marnus, Lyon, Mitch Marsh, Todd Murphy, Renshaw, Smith, Stark, and Warner. So immediately, I just have a few notes written down here about the squad. Overall, I don't feel like there's a heap of shocks, but it's more so the players they've put in are there's some just interesting calls that are different. It's just different how they've built this squad compared to the 2019 series and how they built that squad. So I'm just going to go over that. The big thing is that Warner is in. That's kind of the story that all the big sports companies like Fox Sports and that have been reporting, is that Warner's in. David Warner was always going to be in this squad. There was no way they were going to omit him. He's a senior player in the team. He's got a great record. Has he been a bit crap recently? Absolutely. But he definitely needed to be in this team just for his experience and the leadership he brings to the team as well. I did see an interesting thing that Candice Warner said the other day. I think she was being interviewed by I can't remember who it was, but it was on Fox, and basically the interviewer was saying that, do you think Warner's under a bit of pressure? And she was like, oh, well, who would they bring in instead? And I kind of listened to that and I go, well, yes, Candice, he's a great player, but he has not been performing that well recently. And I just wonder if he doesn't get off to a good start in the first couple Ashes tests, will Australia pull the trigger? Like they did that in 2015 when Shane Watson and Brad Haddin both had poor starts to the series and they just retired them straight away. So maybe that could happen this time as well. What is really interesting is the backups they've got for David Warner and Usman Khawaja. So they've gone with, for the openers in the squad, they've gone Warner, Khawaja, Harris, and Renshaw. Now, it's a really interesting one. I think that Marcus Harris had to be in the squad. He's got a great record in domestic cricket, and he's performing particularly well in the county championship at the moment. I think he got a century the other day. So I see that that's the natural selection to have Marcus Harris in, even though he didn't really do that well in the 2019 Ashes. But then Matt Renshaw, I think, is an interesting one. He did not look the goods in India, and I understand it's different conditions, whatever. He did get a century or two, I believe, in the New Zealand A series as well. But I don't know. I would have probably went with Bancroft instead of Renshaw. I just feel like having four left-handed opening batsmen is a bit naive as well. Having Bancroft in the squad would have been a bit of a point of difference in that, you know, you've got a right-hander who's maybe offers something a bit different to the lefties. Particularly Warner and Harris, like they're pretty much identical players with how they play and their style, and you know they're very much square of the wicket as opposed to down the ground or whatever. So I thought that was interesting. I thought Bancroft had done enough to maybe sneak into the squad. But yeah, they've gone with those four batters. I'm not too surprised by that. I suppose Renshaw can also cover some spots in the middle order as well. The next part I found very interesting is that they've only gone with four fast bowlers. So they've only gone with Cummins, Stark, Hazlewood and Boland. Whereas last time when Australia came out to England, they had those four plus Siddle plus Pattinson plus Nisa as well. So it's really interesting. They've gone against what worked last time, and instead they're just going to back in the four bowlers. And I don't know about that, if I'm being honest. I feel like the 2019 series, one of our biggest strengths is that we had bowlers for like all conditions, and you know that allowed us to have good balance in our attack. And pretty much every single match, our bowlers performed, and that was partially because we had the balance correct for each individual match. Like Stark only played one game in that series, but he probably played the game that he needed to play, which was the one on the flattest wicket of the series at Old Trafford. So I found that a little bit interesting. particularly when they decided that they're going to go with Todd Murphy as well. Todd Murphy is a great bowler, and he really impressed everyone in India. He had a fantastic series, and he's clearly the number 2 spinner to Nathan Lyon, even with Matt Kuhneman kind of lurking around as well. But do you really need to name a second spinner in your squad for the Ashes in generally not big turning conditions? Like, if they really felt like they needed Todd Murphy, they could have named him or brought him in for the test later in the series as opposed to the first 2 tests. That's probably one thing. I think Murphy definitely deserves to be in there, but not at the expense of another fast bowling option like, say, a Lance Morris, or I'll get into Michael Neser in a second. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. I guess I'll get into it now. So there's no Michael Neser in the squad, and instead it looks like the swap has been him for Mitchell Marsh. You have to feel for Michael Neser. Like, he's perpetually been... For a long time, he was the 4th choice bowler. He's been tearing it up in the Shield. Great bowler, can also bat a bit. And for a long time, he was behind Stark, Hazelwood, Cummins, especially since Pattinson has retired. That's kind of been his role. And then Boland's come in and done a fantastic job. No doubt that Boland's passed Neser. But I have really, really thought that Michael Neser would have a big role to play in this England series with how he bowls and the amount of swing he gets, as well as seeing, plus he offers a bit of batting at the end. I thought he would have had a role to play. I thought he would have played maybe the Peter Siddle role that was played in 2019. Just the guy who's going to, pitch it up and nip it around a little bit more swing through the air. But they decided that they're only going to go with the 4 quicks and no Michael Neser. I would be fuming if I was Michael Neser, but from an Australian fan perspective, I also feel like it's a real letdown, and I reckon he would have been really good to watch in those conditions. We saw what he did he's played the 2-day night test. He played against England and the West Indies, and with the pink ball and it swinging through the air, he was unplayable at times. And yeah, it's just a little disappointing that, for me personally, that he wasn't in the squad. And yeah, Mitchell Marsh is in as sort of the reserve all-rounder, the Cameron Green. I don't mind that. I feel like that pick might be a little bit of a anti-Bazball thing. Like, maybe if we get pumped in the first game and England are scoring mountains of runs, maybe Mitch Marsh is the answer to that, where we can have a guy who's more T20 ODI orientated and can come in and have a bit of a hit. I feel like that's an interesting one. I think like he's definitely the second all-rounder to Cam Green, but I would have picked Neser over him personally. I suppose the other one is Josh Inglis is the reserve keeper to Carey. I feel like that's pretty expected. I feel like he's definitely the 2 keeper at the moment. And I don't feel like there was too many other surprises in the squad. Yeah, I think that's about it. Overall, really good squad. I feel like it's a squad that can definitely win the Ashes. Do I think it's the best possible squad they could have picked? Probably not. If I'm picking my squad, I'm probably swapping Todd Murphy for Neser, and I'm probably gonna leave Josh Inglis, because thing with reserve keepers is that usually you have enough time to just call in another reserve keeper if you need one. So I'm probably leaving Josh Inglis and instead bringing in someone like Cam Bancroft instead. So yeah, that's Australia's squad. 49 days until the World Test Championship final and 58 days until the first Ashes Test. I can't wait to see how both of those. I can't wait to see how the World Test Championship final goes first and foremost, but then the Ashes is going to be so fascinating. Bazball versus Australia is going to be particularly good to watch, especially with our fast bowlers. But yeah, that's Australia's squad for the Ashes.